hopefully it allows me to control it on, okay, it does. Okay. So I've got it set up. All I got to do, I've got it just says, it's coming from my account, but it's on yours. It'll be on your page and says, join Elizabeth Cordero. I tagged you and myself, a leader, veteran, and entrepreneur. Okay. And then I've got the title on there as well.
And then you, oh yeah. Oh, it is recording right now.
Yep, I got it recording.
Oh, okay, perfect.
So, but it's not live yet. I haven't pressed live yet.
Okay, so let's breathe in. You're like, I'm not nervous.
I'm a little nervous.
Yeah. So this is actually your interview, right? So I won't be talking as much, but I'm going to be helping asking questions that I think are going to be very important for people to know. I can kind of already see who your public's going to be, and then I kind of want at the end maybe talk a little bit about, books that you read. How are you helping the community? How should people be helping the community? Things that you think people should be doing. But all of this is going to come as we're going. So.
Okay. So you're going to be like asking questions like books I'm reading, who I'm hanging out with in the community. Okay. Awesome.
Okay. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and go live on Facebook.
You tell me when we're ready.
I'm waiting for it to tell me that it's live, I think.
Webinar now streaming live on Facebook.
Yep. It's just doing, so setting up your webinar for Facebook Live.
Okay. You know that I have a way of editing.
Nice. You'll have to show me how to do that a little.
Oh, yeah. I know how to edit on YouTube. It's pretty easy. It's like the easiest thing that you can do.
Nice.
Are we live?
Just about. It looks like it's loading up on Facebook. We're probably live. I know there's a little bit of a delay.
Okay.
Just waiting. Yep, I think we are. Well, it says we're live. I'm going to check your page. I'm just going to go to your page on Facebook.
It's my timeline.
It's so cool to have technology.
I know, this is amazing. Like we can be miles and miles away, but we can still chat. This is how I've been doing all of my interactions from my personal level to work in business. But anyway, the reason why I'm doing it, I'm doing these interviews is because I want to put it out there to the world and send messages of encouragement. And not only that, but to tell the stories of people that we know every single day, people that we come in contact all the time, but we don't have the time to go more deep into who they are. I know you and I, met through real estate, and you've been a good role model for me. And I learn a lot from you when I have conversations. And I'm like, Eric has to send these messages to the world. And this is why I'm doing this interview, which will be available in YouTube. I will be sharing a link pretty soon. So Eric, I read your bio. I was very surprised. In fact, I wore my dress in honor of a
Thank
See,
you.
my American
I love it.
But tell me a little bit about you. Tell me who you are.
So my name is Eric. My name is Eric Brown. I'm 30. I was born in Provo, Utah. My parents are Earl Brown and Carmela Brown. They're still married. I have an older brother. He's 2 years older than me. And his name is Chris, and he has autism. And he's a really cool guy. I love him to death. And then I have my younger sister, and her name is Kiri Brown, and she's really awesome too. She's 4 years younger than myself. So I'm the middle kid, but a little bit of a interesting dynamic there, where my brother, he functions pretty well, but still has to live at home, and there's some challenges with that. So that definitely played a little bit of a challenge, being the middle child. But let's see.
A little bit about your professional side. I know you are a very active agent for Century 21. I know you're very a high. Tell me a little bit more about your professional side of you, and then we'll. Sorry to interrupt, but then we'll go more a little bit more into more of your story because it's very amazing. After I read your bio, you have so many things that you have accomplished in such a young age.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is my third year as a real estate agent. I run a real estate company, and Century 21 Everest is my brokerage. So as a real estate agent, for those that aren't in real estate, we have a way that basically, as we start as real estate agents, we have to hang our license somewhere for insurance and liability. And so Century 21 Everest is my brokerage, and I'm an agent with Century 21 Everest. However, I run my own operation there. I generate my own clients. I get to choose who I work with, and my business in 3 years, basically, I've mostly helped residential people looking for a place to either sell their house or buy a house, where they're trying to get the highest dollar amount that they can for their home. Um, I I've been consistent in my business for 3 years. My first year, I started in March, and I didn't. It took me 18 days to get my first listing, and then she had to get her home ready, and so we 2 months later got it on the market and had it sold. That was crazy time. It was just wild. Like, the market was just on fire. We had
Hours.
18 offers in 72 hours. It was nuts.
Yes.
So my first year, I helped 7 families, and then my second year I did 17, but a lot of those were referred out. I had just a lot of buyers that were a little bit more complex, and I wanted to make sure they got a great experience. So I would refer them out to other agents who were a little bit more experienced with that than myself. And then my third year, I did 18, 18, where I only referred one out. So I took on a little bit more responsibility. And this year, I'm already at 9 under contract and sold. And so my goal for this year is 30 to help 30 families.
And so that people know, this is just not normal. Most people sell 1 to 5 homes in their first year. So it's pretty crazy for you to, as an only agent, running a full-time company, having to do that, because it's a lot of work. It's like a lot of calling, a lot of showing, putting the houses for sale, a lot of paperwork. There's a lot more that goes behind that. So that's very impressive for you to have that many sales in such a short period of time. And that also speaks of you as a professional being able to delegate the deals or the business that you quite couldn't offer everything of you, right? And you were smart and said, okay, I want to give my client the best experience, so I'm going to send them to somebody that has more experience than I do in that field. I actually bought a home from you, and we had this crazy story of this
Yeah,
one house.
I
That
remember
was
it.
very, we had like wire fraud, and like everybody got involved. Like all of us became very close friends, like even Tony, everything. And so that was a crazy, but on my end, it was a very, for me, it was a great experience to know that you were also concerned about what finally was my fault, right? I should have checked things, but I had forgotten that was in the buyer side. So I kept dealing with the company because I'm so used to. And then all of a sudden everything goes down. They take the money. And not only you were willing to help me, you will call me and ask me how I was. And then you contacted the title company. Like, it really took a strong team for me to be able. And I almost want to say I may be the only person in Utah that got all of the money back. It was $180,000. And I got all of it back except for $30 wire transfer, because Wells Fargo wanted to charge to transfer the money back, but I knew that some money had been taken. So it's not always the case that they give you the money back, right? It's
Yeah,
crazy in that sense.
very rare, and it's really unfortunate in our business that we don't have some kind of protection for our buyers with that, other than as an agent to educate buyers and sellers often, just constantly and consistently, to remind them that there are people out there that want their money that, are looking for an opportunity to get that, and that you have to be careful because it happens a
Yeah,
lot. I remember very shortly after
absolutely.
talking to you, I talked to an agent in Idaho who had recently had another
What?
agent in Idaho, over $1 million that they lost and never got it back. And that happens a lot.
Yeah, and I actually had a client that also made a over $1 million purchase before I did, and I actually was happy it happened to me and not with my client's money. Like I was like, so fun. But you and I have to do a whole seminar about wire fraud because I learned so much. I learned the steps as to what to do, what not to do, who to call, who not to call, and so it was very helpful. I also want to say thank you again to Louis from Vanguard Title because he played a big part in saving this money. But regardless, we're not here to talk about wire fraud today. We want to know you and about. I know
Well,
we've had very spiritual conversations. I know you're very in tune with your spirituality, and I just love that. I love that about people because that in itself teaches you as a person. It teaches others as well. I think everything comes from within, and so. Keep telling me the story about your family. I know that you have a brother with autism. I know a lot of people go through that. Tell me some of the challenges that people with children with autism face in an everyday situation. For those of us who have never been in that situation, like maybe educate us a little bit about, what is it like and how is your family able to handle what was it like for you to grow up with brothers or having a brother in that situation. And so, how this plays, because I know in the business side we're like always going right, like it's all about the numbers, it's about the phone calls, but besides behind the business there's this one person that has to go through everything in life just like everybody else does, right? You have to go through family and relationships and all this crazy stuff.
yeah, autism is really interesting. Grow from the personal perspective, I have a story that I remember when I was probably about 4 years old. And I say four because I had to have been in Oregon. That's where my sister was born, and she was born at the age of 4 when I was 4. So I remember coming home off the bus, and my mom pulled me aside, and because I was wondering why my brother was different, and she shared with me that my brother had autism. And as a 4-year-old, you're like, "What's that, mom?" So I didn't really have an idea, but the way that I remember her describing it to me was just that, things were going to be different. That I really don't remember really what she said to me, but I remember shortly after that, me and my brother got distant. Like I remember I recently at an event I went through a meditation where I went back to that memory, and I went back to a couple other memories with my brother. And I remember us being really close best friends. And because of some things that unfortunately we became distant, not because of anything that he did, but because my own guilt and shame, because of him having autism and the way that I treated him at a young age. But to go back to the autism, it was hard. It's a little bit harder to connect with my brother than I want it to be. But the thing that I've realized is that he's a normal human being, just like any of us. He actually is really good at communicating his feelings, and especially through text. Like I'll text him and he'll tell me, and I've heard him tell me things like, "Hey, I'm feeling lonely," or he'll really share his excitement, and he's very curious, and he loves to ask questions. And one thing that I really love about him is that he's because of the way that he sees the world. It's like there's a lot of disability, I guess, or handicap with like the social interaction side, but as far as the human love side, like he is all love. Like he would take he would do anything for me or for my sister, for my parents, and have a lot of gratitude and appreciation for that. And so that's one of the beautiful things about autism. Something really cool is I've heard about other people who have autism, you know, we've come a long way as a society with it, where there are people with autism that are working for Google right now that are making a ton of money, and that's not important. But what is important is that they have a special gift and skill set that if it's enabled or yeah, enabled or cultured, they can really do some awesome things. So, like for instance, my brother, he is amazing with puzzles. You give him a 2,000 piece puzzle, he will do it piece by piece by piece by piece by piece, and it will take him weeks to do it. But then when he's done with it, he could do it in minutes, hours. It's just so quick how fast he does it. And so that's a gift that he has because of the autism. Yeah, he's really good at, actually, he loves to build houses on his computer, so he's really good at doing that, just designing homes and things like that. Um, so yeah, that's kind of a
So
little,
so was it a normal childhood to grow up with him, and and to, or was it a little bit different? Do people see them obviously people do see a little bit of difference, right? Because that's why I feel like when we have to kind of label a name to something that it's, to me, in my opinion, it should be like everybody else, right? We all have something, we're just not labeled that something.
right.
Sometimes we go different things in life. So was it, did you feel any difference, or how do you view that now that you had your family, in that situation? I mean, you probably more, wanting to help children in that situation, and you probably can come with someone who has siblings who have autism and help them with, how to take care of them, and have the empathy and have the patience. And obviously you talked a little bit about shame and guilt, which I believe all of us have. I believe every parent, every brother, every sister, in a way. I think it's a little bit of lack of communication, because it really doesn't take much to go and tell sometimes people who understand, to go to them and say, hey, I'm feeling bad because one time I did this to you. And probably more, some of the time, they're not even going to remember. We think they
Yeah.
do, and we like this guilt forever. And they pretty much don't care nowadays. You know what I mean? That's like 10 years ago, 5 years ago. Like it's over.
You know, that's exactly how my brother reacted. I um I don't want to get into the details of the story because it really doesn't serve anybody to share the details. But I was holding on to a lot of guilt and shame, and when I brought that up with my brother, he doesn't remember it. He doesn't even care. Like he's just like, cool, let's just, let's go back to being normal. Um, and so it was good to share that with him. And something that's really interesting, I don't know if anybody else has experienced this growing up with a brother or family member with autism, but as a kid, I looked at him differently. I looked at him, it was almost like, I don't want to say dehumanized, but that's kind of what it was. It was like, it just was like, I didn't look at him as a normal person. I looked at him as different. And, one thing I can share with people that are going through that is that they're not different. They're just like us. And yes, they have something that makes them different, but they're just like us as people. Like my brother is just like myself. He probably feels more intensely than myself in a lot of ways. And so as I've learned to shift my story about my brother, our relationship has gotten a lot better, where I can actually hug him and embrace him and love him and feel the love that he has for me. And so that's been a really big shift for me, to where as a kid I maybe looked at him as different, or we're not like the rest of us. Now I look at him as like he has his own gift and he's unique, but he's not different. He's going through the human experience like the rest of us are.
Yeah, and I think most of the kids that I've met with autism, they're very, very special. They're very gifted. In fact, I think they're here to teach us the lessons about the things that we oversee for maybe materialistic things or egoistic things. And so I see them being very genuine, very,
Yes.
like you said, just love. That's it. There's nothing else. Nothing else matters but love, which in fact should be the way for us too, right? So in that sense, that's great that they come to this world and give us something that and teach us something. And so but tell me a little bit, when I was reading your bio, I also read about your sister. So you want to talk to us about that relationship and, how was that about, and share with us a little bit more about, because I think once you tell us that, I want to go a little bit more into detail, because I feel that a lot of people right now are struggling with that. And so share us a little bit more about, what your sister's going through, and if that's okay, if it would be fine to share, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. So I want to preface it. I want to give a little bit of a background. My mom had my brother when she was 16, and she had me when she was 18, and then she had my sister when she was 22. And my father is 4 years older, and they both came from very dysfunctioning families. So I'm sure everybody at some level has experienced that. Um, so when my sister, was born, it was really unfortunate. How to put it? We just we we unfortunately didn't get close very young. Um, I had some anger towards my sister because of um, a, s- a story that I had where she got more attention than me, and a story that I had where I felt like my mom or my dad maybe didn't want me interacting with her. And that's my own story. I own that. Like, I love my parents, and they've done a really good job. I mean, for having my brother autistic at the age of 16 and 20, as a 30-year-old and not having kids, I can imagine what it would be like to have a 16-year-old or a kid at 16 and a kid at 18 with
Mhm.
absolutely no financial like stability. Um, it just, I mean, probably one of the hardest things that I think anybody could go through. So, um, our relationship has gotten a lot better, and I think my sister. What's really awesome about when I shared the bipolar in my bio is that she's done a really good job of really overcoming that. And from what I understand, it's just an imbalance of chemicals in herself, and so she constantly has to be mindful of that, which I think we can all relate to, because really when you look at like depression or the or just really down times that we have, it's an imbalance of chemicals in our brain,
Very
and so we have to give ourselves the things that we need to overcome that. And so my sister actually has been studying psychology now, which is really cool. She's gone back to school to learn that, and she's super smart. I have to just really point that out, because she graduated high school with her associate's degree, and after that she had some struggles going to school down in southern Utah University, and had to take a break from it and come back. But she's done really well. She worked for Discover, and recently got a promotion that I don't know how to describe, but I know that she works a lot with power of attorneys, and with power of attorney documents, and with documents and releasing them to attorneys or people that need them, um, when they're taking a look into accounts and things like that. So she's really gifted. Um, she's very detail oriented. Like my sister will take forever to do anything. We would go snowboarding this last summer, last winter before coronavirus. We were going snowboarding every weekend, and she would take forever to get ready, but she would do it better than anybody else. She never forgot
all women.
anything.
I think we're in that. So it's normal.
Yeah.
But that's good. I think it just came from a place where she understood what she was going through. I think a lot of people need to understand that bipolar is actually uh, it's actually that something that people struggle really badly, that makes them, like their mood go up and down. And I want to say, a lot of us as women, I don't know, guys, I talk from all the, but I'm a woman, but we go through that, right? Like for us, it's all hormonal. Like one day we're extremely happy, and the next day we're just sad. The next day I wake up and I'm crying in my bed for no reason whatsoever. So I'm very happy that she's taking that and gone through wanting to help others, going into psychology. And I think most of the time is us wanting to understand what's happening to us, is doing that research, and not only that, but um, now extending it to other people. And I know that takes us to the next question, which is, you have also struggled on your end with some other stuff. Do you want to talk to us about that? That's kind of
Yeah.
the subject that. So tell me, I know you mentioned in your bio that you had struggled with suicide. And I think for a lot of people watching right now all over the world, this is something that we have, I want to say, like most of us have struggled throughout our life at some point. I think it comes in my situation, when I did struggle with that, or when I was in very deep emotional times. And one, it was when I was very young, and then when I was just emotionally drained, right, when you just lack to see how to move forward. And so tell me about your experience with, suicide, or like.
Yeah. I am more than happy to open up about that. So, you know, uh, I'm trying to figure out where to start. I guess I'm gonna start with I don't know. I guess I'll just start with the childhood because that's where it always comes from, right?
Mhm.
So, as a child, I didn't really understand how to process emotion very well, and I would just kind of push things aside as a way to protect myself, and and it caught up to me, but it caught up to me through a lot of events. So, like, uh, I'm trying to can, can you help me figure out a place to start? Because I'm really struggling with figuring out where to
Yeah.
start so that I can talk about that.
No, and thank you so much, because you've been great about telling emotions, right? Most people don't want to accept, like you just told us, hey, I felt guilt, I felt shame. So thank you so much for opening up. I think more of us need to be that way, where a lot of us just like try to, not go into this emotional stuff. But I guess what made you decide in your lifetime that you were actually not wanting to live anymore? What made you say, this for me is, it's like, this is it? How were you feeling at that moment? Because I see a lot of people feeling very difficult emotions, not knowing how to process that, and how at one point, as valuable as life is, and as it's in knowing that we have a purpose in life, and so unique and so different from each one of us, and that we all contribute to the world. What makes a person say, this is it, right?
Yeah.
For example, me, it was just like a loss of a baby. I lost my baby, and I was just extremely sad, right? I was just bleeding out, and I was extremely tired, and I said, I felt a lot of guilt just like you did, and I wanted to just not leave anymore. That was for me kind of like, but it was also a wake up moment after that, because then I realized that, man, I had my family still to look forward to. And I think at that moment, I did not see anything for myself. I did not see like, I want to. It was more like, look, I have a loving mother, and I have a family, and I started counting the blessings in my life. So tell me about your story. Tell me, how did everything happen, and how were you feeling, and what got you to get out of that situation?
Okay. Thank you. So one thing I want to start with is that I I had probably two very defined moments in my life where I wanted life to end, and I'm very grateful that I was never willing to do it myself. One of those moments, I was in Afghanistan, and this was back in 2011, and there were a lot of courses of events that led up to it, and um, there was always this hope that I had that especially as I got older, uh, with my second struggle that really put me into a very, very destructive state where I remember days where I would just cry out to to the universe, whatever. I was agnostic at that point. So I would cry out and say, like, why do you have me here? Why am I going through this pain? But I always felt like there was this hope that there was a reason for that pain, and that if I just held on just a little longer, it would all make sense. And so I would say that for those that are struggling with that, hold on and remember that there's a reason why you're going through it. And like my sister now going through psychology, her intention is that she wants to learn how to she wants to find a cure for bipolar disorder. And if you don't go through that pain, um, it's really difficult to that gives you so much leverage to want to find a cure, or to give you purpose, or to work towards something. And so as much as the pain sucked, that was one of the benefits. So I'll talk a little bit about my story. As a young kid, like I said, I grew up in a dysfunctioning family, and I maybe that's what I label it. The story is just that we weren't really connected very well. My mom and dad struggled. They've been married 30 years, but they struggled through that just like any married couple does. And they're both working full time, managing three kids, and all three of us wanted attention. You've got my brother who has autism, my sister who's the youngest, and myself. And I really wanted attention. I wanted attention a lot from my parents. And obviously back then I didn't know that that's what was doing, but I would act out, and I would really want attention from them. And it was very destructive at a very young age. I have a memory that comes right now where I was building this train, and I was probably in Oregon again. And the train, I'm very small. I was like 4 years old, and so the train felt like it was really tall, but it kept falling over, and I would get pissed, and so I'd just throw the train across the room and scream and be like, "Rah!" My mom would come in and be like, "What is your deal?" And I'm like, "I can't stack this train any higher. I don't get it." And so I would just destroy the train. And unfortunately, until about 3 years ago, that was like my method in life of how I would overcome things. But I would get destructive. And so growing up, like fast forward, I'm 15. I fall in love with this girl because she gives me some needs that I'm not getting at home, just some love and attention. And please don't think like my parents were doing the best that they could. They were trying to give me that. In a lot of ways, I was pushing against them and saying, no, like, I don't want that. And so I fell in love with this girl at 15. We got engaged at 50. It was nuts. Like, what the heck was I doing? But bought her a ring. We had a terrible relationship, but for some reason, like I would just constantly go back to that, where like
Yeah.
it was just awful. And so we broke up. I joined the military. We got back together. We got married. I went off to basic training, and I came back home, and I was part of the Utah National Guard. So being part of the Guard, I was on a flight team as a Black Hawk helicopter crew chief, and I would fly once a week, and I would have a regular job I was in car sales at that point. And so I would come back and do that, and go to work, and then try and manage this relationship, which was, we would fight constantly until 5 a.m. And I would go back to work at 9 o'clock the next day, and it was just like,
Wow.
it was awful. But for me, it felt normal. That's the weird part, was that at the time it felt so normal. And so but there was a lot of pain there that I wasn't dealing with, and eventually I deployed to Afghanistan 2011, and I was over there, and we unfortunately had to deal with a situation where she got pregnant. And I I used to want to be the victim in that, but it is what it is. I was over in Afghanistan. We had a terrible relationship. We weren't good to each other during that relationship at all, and so she had some needs, and she had moved on and got pregnant. So we got divorced, and that was the first time where I really felt it. And I remember flying off the flight line in Bagram, and we're taking off, and I'm sitting in the left side seat of the helicopter, looking out to the Himalayan mountains. And I remember asking God to put a bullet in my head. Like, that's how bad it was. And I was like, so, I mean, it was bad. Like, I fought with these thoughts left and right where, um, fortunately my chain of command was smart, and they managed my weapons for me. Obviously when I went out and I flew, I had to have them, but they were very cautious with me, and they knew that I was in a very fragile state, and so they protected me. I was always surrounded by people, so I couldn't do something stupid, but it was very difficult. It was a very difficult moment for me to go through that and wonder, like, why would I go through this kind of pain? Like, why me? Why would I go through that kind of pain? Because it was, at the time, I'm a 21-year-old kid, and it was the most difficult thing I'd ever gone through, to be, foreign country, fighting for my country, to feel like my whole life was ripped out from underneath me, and to not have a choice in any of it, and to have absolutely no control. And not only that, but I have people around me depending on me, because if I'm not present, their lives are in jeopardy. And so that was really difficult. So that was the first time where I really struggled with suicide, and I never pulled the trigger. I never tried to do it, but I fought with the thoughts daily, hourly at points, and it made me very hard. It made my heart very hard. I became agnostic. At this point, I had really a lot of doubt of whether God even existed anyways, and this really made me want to not believe that God existed. So I became very agnostic, and and so I got back home, and I started, and I had made this declaration on myself that, what, like, I've tried to live my life this other way. It's not working for me, so I'm going to go ahead and just live life the way that I want to. And I drink a lot of alcohol. I would work Monday through Thursday, and Thursday night I would go and drink, and Friday night I would drink, and Saturday night I would drink, and then I would rest all day Sunday, because my body was like, just, yeah.
And then go ahead.
Oh, so through that, I started another journey where I eventually left the military, and for the next 3 years, I went down a really destructive cycle again, where at the time I started drink. I would just basically any kind of addiction that I could have, minus hard drugs. Fortunately, I never touched cocaine or heroin or methamphetamines, but I would basically do anything else that was addictive. And I got to this point where it was so destructive, and I remember wanting to give up, and asking, like, thinking about just ending everything, and wondering why I was going through it, and just like I'd come home and cry sometimes, just so hard. It's like, why would somebody put me on this planet and give me this pain, which is so, like, as I think about it, it's like my own fault. I was doing it to myself, but like, because of the story that I was in, the environment and everything, just the way that everything pushed itself together, it felt like somebody was putting me through this, and it was somebody else's fault. So that was just where the framework was at the time.
And so obviously now looking back, you realize that we are responsible, or you were responsible of your own actions, right?
Uh-huh.
Really look back, you could, well, obviously you were young, and this is why things happen, because I imagine that now your relationships are a lot better. You take that into consideration, right? You probably have less or not abusive. I don't want to say less, but less drama into the relationship, because you learn from that in that sense. So when we look back and we see that all those things happen because you just didn't know any
Yeah.
better how to handle. And so we really create what's in our life. And I think the moment you take responsibility, and I want to say there's a balance, right? I want to take responsibility for the things that for everything I did, but also I don't want to take so much responsibility where I feel this guilt of everything I did. So in a case where I want to learn from my past, I want to learn from my relationships, but at the same time I'm also maybe 100% responsible, and the other person's another 100% responsible. So that's where the learning comes. And it's beautiful that now you can see that, where I was going through all of this and I was just wondering what in the world was making me go through all this pain, but in fact it was yourself, right? But
Hmm.
now you can see it, and now you can get better, and now it's gotten to where you are right now with a spirituality, trying to understand more. Now you believe in God, right? Now you're more of a person that believes in God, and every time I talk to you, you're always, like just thinking about all these great things that they just make you better as a person. But tell me about a little bit about, because I know you touch about being in Afghanistan. Tell me a little bit more about that. What a person, and this is what we like seeing. We're just home, right? Your parents are home, your family's home, but you're out there in the lines, right? Fighting, not only fighting for your country, but fighting with yourself, fighting with your internal self. So in that sense, what was it like to be there over there, and
Yeah.
coming back? Obviously you touch a little bit about that. You went into, you know what all of us go through, which is addiction. Like sometimes somehow, in order for us to be able to resolve our personal issues, we go through some type of destruction, whether that's overeating, whether that's drinking, smoking. I mean, that takes a form of many ways, right? And so when it comes to a point where you're able not to do that, but tell me about your experience there, so that people that stay home, like for example right now, they can understand what somebody actually goes through, right?
Well, what's really awesome, I actually had a counseling session this morning, and recently I've been feeling like I'm back in Afghanistan with everything that's going on with the coronavirus.
Mm.
And one of the awesome things is that when I was 27, I went through kind of that transition where where I became aware of myself and my choices and my actions, and I started being able to take accountability for it. And that was a major shift for me. So, you know, one of the points that I want to point out with that is that those things that we do that are destructive, we're typically doing that because we want connection. So if instead of doing those things, we give ourselves what we really want, that's why we're doing it, is because we're afraid and we're trying to numb ourselves. But really what we want in those moments is to connect. And what it takes to do that is to get back to presence, to focus on the moment. For instance, right now we're doing this interview, and if I have a thought, like a minute ago when I asked you to if you could elaborate, I was struggling because my mind was wanting to go elsewhere, and I needed a moment to recollect and reconnect and reground myself. And that's the process that we have to go through to get out of the addiction and back into like reality, is to focus on the moment. What are you doing in the moment, and what do you need to be doing right then? So when I was in Afghanistan, first off, when you join the military, you go through basic training, and it's like a depending on if you're a Marine or an Army, or if you're in the Army or if you're Navy, it's like a 14-week process just for basic training. And they really break you down. Your first week's pretty awesome because they don't yell at you at all. And then After you get processed into basic training, and you get your shots and you get all your inventory, they put you on a bus, and it's like, bam, all of a sudden they start yelling at you, and they break you down, and they just start like beating you up mentally, like your mindset. They're just like constantly in your face. And I don't know what it's like now because we didn't have cell phones back then. And I know when my grandpa went through, it was even more difficult. But it was like their goal is to break you down and build you up into what a soldier is, which is a lot of masculine energy. And it's this like society where you do what you're told. Um and there's a lot of benefits to it. Like, there's rank, exactly who you're talking to and who you're dealing with, because it's literally like on their uniform who they are and all the accolades that they've accomplished and their whole record. And so you can really define who somebody is and put them in the position that they need to be in order to move that the mission forward. And so that's really awesome. But it creates this character of like just super masculine energy. So you go through basic training, and then you go through AIT, which is where you learn how to do your job, and then you come back, and then you're constantly training, and your mindset is just like complete the mission. That's what you're about, is just complete the mission, keep moving forward. So I go over to Afghanistan, and before we went, we were in a pre-mobilization, and I have to be careful about some of the details I talk about, because I have to be respectful of just like other people, and I want to make sure I protect them, and that I protect who I was. And there's just so I may not talk about certain details, but just because I really shouldn't talk about them. But we go through in Texas while we were there, before we left. We actually had some people that had died in Afghanistan, and it really was a wake up call for us, because some of the people in our unit knew these people. And so it became a huge reality check for me that I'm about to go over to Afghanistan, and like some people that had left weeks before we left, weeks before this, we just got in the news that they passed away. And so that was a huge reality check. It was my first deployment and my only deployment. And so we get over to Afghanistan, and it was a lot of what I can describe about it is that you're immediately put into a environment where you feel unsafe. That's not the way that I would have described it back then. But that, because I didn't know how to describe it. And that's where it kind of correlates to this whole coronavirus thing is, one, we all probably feel unsafe in a lot of ways, because everybody's afraid to go out. You're distancing yourself from other people because you're worried that they could give you something that could literally kill you, or you could pass on to somebody else and kill them. And so there's this responsibility we have as people. So that's one of the things that I'm finding is very similar. The other thing was, while I was over there, that we had a lot of free time. So I would work, like there were days where I basically would have these shifts where it'd be like 12 days on and then 2 days off. But on those 12 days that I would work, I may be like flying. And so there would be, time where I would be flying. But outside of that, maybe I'm just waiting to go fly, or maybe I'm on a mission where I'm supposed to be taking care of the helicopters. So, the helicopters are out. We're not necessarily doing anything because the helicopters are out. So, I have to wait for them to come back before I can work. So there's a lot of downtime, which I know we're also facing with this coronavirus. A lot of people are sitting at home, like myself. Fortunately, I get to work as much as I want, because that's a cool thing about being a real estate agent, is that in Utah, there's 3.2 million people for me to call and help. But, I definitely am seeing like another 15 hours a day that I have that I didn't have before, because I don't have the distractions at the office. I don't have to drive to the office and drive back. I'm not having to drive to appointments and drive back. So it's really freeing up a lot of time, and I'm finding not necessarily I'm finding spaces where I'm getting close to being bored again. And um, so that's kind of what it was like to be in Afghanistan. It was this space where it was really difficult to feel safe, because like literally at any moment you if you weren't with people, especially at night, you could get rolled up. And that was a common, that was, we would talk about this to each other about, hey, like, you need to be with people at all times, because if you're alone, that's when bad things can happen. If you're with people, then you can go where you need to go and you can get there safely. But if you're alone and you're walking at night, like, there's a chance you could literally get kidnapped. People literally tried to poison us while we were over there, tried to poison our food. I mean, like the coronavirus, like, would have literally killed us. So that's kind of like what, we had to deal with on it, at least as far as the fear part. What we had to deal with on a daily basis was that we were in this space where we had a mission to accomplish. We had work that we had to do, but like, we had to deal with these fears that came along the way, because you know because of the nature of the work.
Yeah, and I think, and I kind of relate to that, where I come from a place that's very unsafe too. I was recently
Hmm.
back in my country, and I completely felt unsafe the entire time. We had like our stuff almost stolen, like people like trying to rob you 24/7. You have to watch everything carefully. I mean, it just goes like there's no respect for women. Like men literally, you're walking by and they're just telling you awful things, and there's nothing or no one that you can go to. There's no law. And I think for me with this virus thing, that's my biggest concern. I'm like, after coming back from Mexico, my biggest concern in my community is that I want to make sure that we are like safe, right? Because that's what makes a good community, when we're able to go outside. And I'm always on my own, right? So I want to be able to walk at night at 3 in the morning and know that I'm going to be safe. And so I totally relate to that. And I think that has been my big concern now with the virus, because what happens when people don't have jobs? What happens when people cannot afford to buy things? What are they going to do? They're going to have to steal from someone somewhere, because otherwise, unless somebody like the government's going to give them food the entire time, or I mean, we can provide so much, but it's so many people. And so that's, obviously we want to stay positive. Like I keep telling people, plan for the worst but hope for the better, for the best, because we want to help people, like in every situation that we can. But it's kind of concerning. And so that takes us into mindset. I know you're very big into mindset. Tell us a little bit about how you prepare in the day, before, as a self-employed person. When you get up in the morning, you have the choice to go to work or stay in bed, right? There's no clock, there's nobody calling you and say, hey, where are you, why are you not showing up? So it's all up to you. So tell me, how are you preparing your mindset every day to be a top agent? How do you get up and say, okay, this is what I need to do? What is your morning ritual? What do you do just for that?
Well, I'm really grateful to have gone through the military, because it has put me in a place where when my back is against the wall, I perform really well. All of a sudden, I start taking a lot of action, and so I'm really grateful for that. The military gave me an opportunity to learn discipline and accountability and structure, and a lot of really the essential things that you need right now. So even, I did make the decision to start working from home, because right before they put out the order that real estate was an essential business, they had come out with the proclamation. The mayor had come out with the proclamation that anybody that was working needed to be working from home unless you were essential. And at that time, we weren't essential. So I moved my business to my home space. And part of why I did that was actually so I could deal with that fear of working from home. But you know, my routine is, I've gotten really good at keeping my routine down, and it's been very important because um I would say the most important thing for me to do at any point, no matter where I'm at in life, is I got to take care of myself. So if I'm not taking care of myself, it's like I relate it to a dam, and the dam drying up because the holes like are there are holes in my dam, and the water doesn't flow back in until I fix those holes. So like literally that's my favorite analogy of it for myself, is that I've got to take care of myself, and I've got to take care of those holes and do those repairs, or else, unfortunately, I can't take care of others in my business, and I can't be a leader in the community, and I can't be there for the community that I've established, and the people that are around me. So some of the things that I do on a daily basis, like even on Saturday and Sunday, I get up at 6 in the morning. Um, During the weekdays, I'm up at 5, and I get up at 5, and the very first thing that I try to do is I try to find a space of gratitude and appreciation immediately. So I'll get out of bed. My alarm clock is not near my bed, it's away from me. So I have to get out of bed. I have to turn on the lights. I turn off my alarm clock, and I will sit for a few minutes and allow myself to wake up and just make sure that I get awake. I don't go back to my bed. I get awake first. And then from there, I will make I will find a little bit of gratitude and appreciation. I'll spend typically 45 minutes in that space where I try to really gather my thoughts and make sure that I'm that I'm feeling some gratitude. If there's some kind of emotion that I'm feeling, I may sit in that emotion. I'll just give myself whatever I need for 45 minutes before I do anything. And I'll just sit there, and I don't look at Facebook. I try not to look at texts. If I do, I may respond to them, but then I put my phone away. Um, I just try and sit and be present with myself and just feel where I'm at, so that I know what I need to give myself. Because if you do that, if you're constantly checking in with yourself, you only have to make micro changes instead of having to make these massive changes to get yourself back on track. So after I'm done with that 45 minutes, then I go out and I do some kind of workout. Some days I do yoga. Some days I go and run. Right now the gym's closed, so I can't go lift weights. But fortunately, with YouTube and with some other applications, there are home workouts that you can do. And so I try to really get some kind of endorphins in myself and really, really work out and change my physiology. And then and I try to spend 45 minutes doing that, 30 to 45 minutes doing that. I might incorporate some breath work into it. Um, and then I come back and I make a cup of coffee, and I find a little bit more appreciation with that and a little bit more gratitude, and I sit with that. And depending on how much time I have left before I need to start my day, I might do some reading. I like to read the Bible. I have I I'm Christian, and so I follow uh, the Bible is like my tool book, and it's awesome because I get a lot of really awesome lessons out of it. And so I might spend some time with that, or like this morning I was reading The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham. And so I'll do that while I enjoy my coffee, and I'll really try to stay in that state of appreciation and gratitude. And then once I need to start my day, right before I do that, I write out my gratitudes. I write out affirmations about myself. And typically those affirmations are, I'm very specific with them. So they revolve around the fears that I may be dealing with. And they're meant as a tool to tell me the truth about who I am. And so that I can remind myself who I am, because those fears are lies that we tell ourselves, or that something is telling us. And so I will write down affirmations to remind myself of what the truth is, and then I write out my intentions for the day, and I go through a RPM process, results planning method process. And I just recently started this. This has been newer for me, but for the last couple of weeks, I'll write down everything that I need to get done for the day, and then I'll categorize it and group it of importance so that I know where I need to spend my day. And what's awesome about this, this is something that I just recently came to terms with, is that Colton Lindsay has been one of my mentors lately. I joined his mastermind, and he reminded me again for probably the 700th time that what builds our confidence in ourselves is, in our belief in ourselves, is is doing these things that we're writing down that we say that we're going to do every day, or do that we're going to do that day. And so those are promises that you're making to yourself by writing it down, by saying, hey, this is what I want to get done. You're making this promise to yourself that you're going to get this done. So, I've used that as a tool to give myself an opportunity to have even more confidence in myself, where I can write down what it is I want to get done, and then I get it done. And then it's really important for me to, and this is where I've struggled in the past, and I think probably a lot of us struggle with this. We need to really reward ourselves for accomplishing those things that we do that are on that list. So a simple good job, like you like is goes a long way. So, for instance, getting up at 6 o'clock this morning, I didn't tell myself as I'm thinking about it. And I should have said, hey man, good job. You got up at 6 o'clock this morning. It's Sunday. Everybody else is asleep right now and you're up right now. Good job. After I spent my time feeling gratitude and appreciation, telling myself, good job, because that, either if I'm not telling myself good job, I'm telling myself nothing, or even worse, I'm telling myself, why didn't you do it better? And that's where we get stuck as people a lot of times. Like, we focus on the things that we're doing wrong instead of focusing on the things we're doing right. So my morning routine really is about setting myself up for success, to get myself in the right mindset, so that when I go to work, I'm full of confidence in myself. I'm full of confidence in my creator. I have certainty. I've taken care of all my needs for the day. And now I can go ahead and go to work and accomplish whatever's important for me for the day.
So are those the things that you would do for yourself, or obviously self-love, or caring for you, the yoga, the meditation, the writing? Is that more for the business side, or is that overall for yourself too? Or is there anything different that you do on top of that just for your own personal thing, right? Like, this is what I do for myself, like, or are they two together?
Well, they're definitely together. As being an entrepreneur, I've come to this, like, I guess, agreement with myself that I'm really building a brand. And so when I take care of myself personally, I'm taking care of my business. If I don't take care of myself personally, my business doesn't exist. I don't have any business, because like, it's like, it's too difficult to pick up the phone, because I haven't been able to deal with the things internally. So at that point, like, my thought is on, like, it's like being a plant, and, like, taking, and I guess plants don't take care of other plants, but if you were a plant and you could take care of other plants, like, your plant is dying and you're trying to take care of something else. Like, you can't, it's not it is possible to take care of other things, but you can't really give that person what they need if you're not in a space where you can do that.
You share.
um which I think, you mentioned balance earlier, and there is some balance to it, because, like, we are a conduit, and so we're a conduit for love. So when we love other things, we are loving ourselves in as well. But with our mindset, it's so important that we take care of those negative thoughts, and that we're setting ourselves up for success, to have the thoughts that serve us, the thoughts that encourage us, that cause us to grow, that cause us to be able to serve others better. Because, if my thoughts are negative, my actions towards others are going to be negative. And so maybe I act out in frustration, or maybe I act out in anger, because I haven't taken the time to take care of myself, to make sure that my thoughts are serving me, that my thoughts are, that I've rewarded myself, that I've given myself gratitude and appreciation, that I've coached myself through what I need to go through the day. So I have some flexibility with it. Like I definitely have a routine that I try to stick to, like getting up at 5 in the morning. Um, but I but I don't like but I'm not super rigid about it, because that takes the emotion out of it. I like to be flexible with it. So for instance, something that I may do today, maybe I'll go hike because I feel like I need to get out in nature. So maybe I'll go do that. Or I've had these visions, like, or these ideas of getting out and going fishing, and I haven't been able to, because I have other things that I need to take care of. But maybe I'll go fishing if I have time one day. So I like to be flexible with it. But I like to spend time with myself and give myself things that I need. whatever it is for the day. It might be it could be yoga. Um, it could be really just sitting for 45 minutes and just really processing that emotion that I'm feeling and just like being present with myself. It could be reading a book, it could be cooking, it could be anything. It's just stuff that is going to increase my energy and make me feel and be more connected and more present in the moment.
Oh, that's great. That's amazing. Amazing things to do in the morning. Tell me about what books have impacted your life. Which books would you say these are the books that changed my life, and or what books would you recommend people to read about different things in life, in business or whatever is that you say these are the books that people need to get a hold of.
Yeah. So, um, w- because of my story, one of the things that brought me out of being agnostic and brought me into believing in God again was a lot of crazy experiences where like they were like legitimately divine intervention, where like God forced me to sit down and talk to certain people, and we neither of us should have been there, and we were both there and we were talking. And I know you and I, through our experience of the transaction of selling you a home and all of that, like we both got to experience feeling like everything was happening for a reason and it was all working out. And so, uh, you know, I hope so much for people to be able to have that out there, because it is hard to believe in something other than ourselves if you haven't experienced that. And I can understand that because I've come from a background where, I grew up in Christianity, and at 15 I didn't I walked away from it because I was like, I don't understand this, and it just doesn't make sense to me, and so I'm going to walk away from it. But the story of Christ was something that was really powerful for me, and so um, I feel like one of the awesome things about Christianity is that it frees us from the guilt and shame that our own Creator came and died for us, and as Himself, as Himself in the flesh, came and died for us, and that frees us from the guilt and the shame, because we don't need to earn love from anybody or anything. Like that grace is given to us for free. It's a gift, and because of faith, we are going to make it to the next life. And that's what and so Christ breaks us from the bondage of thinking that we have to do something to earn our way to our Creator, and through Christ we're able to have access to that. And so I love reading my Bible, because there is a lot, definitely every chance that I get, like for instance, the other day I was reading the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, and realizing that, whether or not this is fact or fiction, I can't tell you, because I wasn't there for any of it, right? So, but one of the awesome things is if you look at it as a story, you can always learn something from it. And so, looking at the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, it was like God said to Abraham that He was going to destroy the city, and He would save anybody that was righteous. But for some reason, they weren't able to find anybody who was righteous in the city. And one of the things that taught me was that our environment is super important, because if we're hanging out with people who are doing good things, we will do good things as well. And so, I love reading my Bible, and I don't necessarily read it every day, but I do really enjoy getting into it, and picking things out of it that maybe can help me become a better person. Um, Recently, I read The Four Agreements. That was a really powerful book, and I love that it teaches you that. Like one of my biggest takeaways from it was that, the power of speaking, and how we have so much power when we say things, when we speak things, that, I mean, if I were to curse you, I'm literally like putting that energy on you. And you know it may create beliefs in yourself that you may have not had before. And we do that to ourselves. So we, like as a child, part of the reason why I had these difficulties processing emotion was because I had these agreements that it wasn't okay for me to even feel them. And so because that's what it took. And so it's really important that we as people are very careful about the words that we speak, because the words have power. We're literally, every word that we say, you know, even if it's something like let's say there's a task that you want to do for the day, and you say, I think I can do it, or maybe I can do it, versus I will do it. Like, you're going to give yourself a different outcome depending on how you even speak those words. So, you know, and I'm not saying that you should sugarcoat things or lie, but you know, at the end of the day, our words do have power, and the story that we're telling ourselves is going to play a big factor in how our reality uh how our reality projects itself. And so that was awesome. I love that about the four agreements. Also to obviously divorce any agreements that aren't helping us, which a lot of those agreements make us feel guilt and shame. So, you know, we have this, it could be different for everybody, but we all have agreements that we have with ourselves that we've picked up along the way. Maybe we picked them up from our parents, or we picked them up from a friend or a past relationship. And you know, really being aware and really being present with yourself to realize what those agreements are. And so that was another takeaway I had from that book, and to not take anything personally, because we're all just going through the human experience together. And for instance, yesterday I was driving around with one of my clients, and he was like, you know, I couldn't ever be a real estate agent because you know, I'd be concerned about whether people thought I stunk, or you know, whether I'd brushed my teeth. And I like, the first thought that came to my mind was like, does he think that I stink? And so I was like taking it personally when, and later on he made this comment of like, because I was like, yeah, like I wear deodorant every day, and I really am intentional about brushing my teeth. And he was like, yeah, I'm not sure if I wore deodorant today. And I was like realizing that he wasn't even talking about me, he was talking about himself. So like, we sometimes take these things personally that people say to us when they're not even talking about us. Like 99% of the time they're talking about themselves, and we think that they're talking about us, but in reality that's not the case. They're talking about themselves. And so I can't remember what the other two agreements are, but I'm sure I could if I wanted
So
to.
those are the
But
most impactful to you.
yeah, so that was a good book. Right now I'm reading The Road Less Stupid, which is about asking yourself really good questions to get answers that will give you better outcomes in life. And so that's been a really good book. Really dense, really hard to read. um I Let's see, what else have I read. Ryan Serhant came out with a book, Sell It Like Sirhan. That was a fun book. I love books like that because they're really like inspiring. They just give you an idea of somebody else's life and some of the things that they've gone through. He doesn't like to say no, so that was one of the awesome things that I learned in his book, was like, don't turn down opportunities. And you know, you have to define what an opportunity is, because not everything is an opportunity, but you should say yes to anything that's going to help you get along, get through, get to the next step in life. The Third Door, I read that recently. That was a really good book. That's about the idea that like, if you were to go into a building, you could always use the front entrance that everybody uses. There's always a back entrance that maybe like the rich and famous have access to, but there's always a door, there's always another way in. There's always another way in the building. And people like Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or Gary Vaynerchuk or Lady Gaga or gosh, what's the name of the actor that he tries to interview in it? Anyways, anybody that accomplishes anything really big, they typically don't go through the front door or the back door. They take the third door, and they basically, that it's the path that that most people aren't willing to take, but will always get you there. You always will make it if you just keep moving forward and find your way through that third door. And
Yeah,
so, yeah, it's a really good book. Those are the last couple books that I've read. Yeah,
you are
I
an
love reading.
reader. I know, like you have stocks and stocks of books. That's great. You like
Yeah.
read more than 20 people together. Um, well, before we finish, is there anything else you would like to share or to tell people, I guess, in these difficult times, a lot of the people that are staying home, losing their jobs, you know, how they should keep mentally in any way, right? People just like staying at home worrying about what's happening. Anything that's helpful to people overall, like not necessarily business owners, but the people in general.
Yeah.
Is there anything positive that you would like to share with them, or and with that, we'll thank you for your time and leave the interview.
Yeah, there's two things that come to mind. One of my mantras has been, if you do the work, you will achieve the outcome. So for those of you that are really worried about where you're headed in life, just remember that if you're doing the work, you will achieve the outcome. And sometimes we think that the outcome is something that we want when it's not that. So we may not, if you do the work, you will achieve what you truly desire. I actually have three things. The next thing is that, trials are meant as a way to give us more, and it creates dependency. It really does create dependency on whatever it is that is driving this whole experience for us. I like to call it God. But trials give us more because it creates a dependency on our creator, and through that he is able to give us more. So really, this is an awesome opportunity for everybody, even though it probably feels like it sucks for a lot of people. We all have the opportunity to have more of the things that we want because of this. And the last thing that I want to share is just a strategy that I've used to help myself remind myself of what the truth is. It's really important as we're as as we live, that we try and identify when we're feeling fear, because fear is a sign that, we're trying to protect ourselves. But a lot of times what we're telling ourselves when we have that fear is not necessarily something that's true. And so what I would just encourage every one of you to do is, when you're in those fearful spaces, take a second and write down your thoughts, write down what you're thinking and how it's making you feel, and then look at that and take a look at it, and ask yourself, is this really true? Is this really true? Because 99, I don't know of any times, I'm sure there's probably one out there, but most of the time it's going to not be the truth. It's going to be something that is there to control you and stop you from moving forward. And so what you need to do is you need to replace that with something that is truth. And you need to find something that you can tell yourself that is truth, that is going to build you up and is going to help you to reconnect to who you are, and is going to help you to move forward towards your destiny. So I would just encourage all of you that, every one of us is experiencing a lot of this, and we are all experiencing this together. But when you feel that fear, replace that with truth, because that's how you move forward, and that's how you get back on track, is to remind yourself of what the truth is, and give yourself, it's okay, like, we have all the time in the world. I know it feels like sometimes we don't, but give yourself some time, and be very gentle to yourself, because um, other people may not be gentle to us, but we deserve to be gentle to ourselves. It's okay to give ourselves some grace, and some um, some encouragement, and to be nice to ourselves. So if you're finding yourself being critical of yourself, or you're finding yourself judging yourself, or you're finding yourself feeling guilt or shame, it's okay to take a break from that for a second, and just give yourself some grace, and allow yourself to take a look at that.
Yeah, well, wow. Thank you so much, Eric. I appreciate your time. You've left us with a lot of things that we can implement in our businesses, in our personal life. Thank you for sharing, for being open and vulnerable with people, and so that they can see. I'm trying to send the messages that, in fact, everything's okay, and we are all people. We all go through the same things, and the way some people handle it is different than others. But at the end of the day, it may give somebody else the alternative to see life in that light. I also agree with you. I believe that the more you want to attract your life, the more love you give to yourself, and then it's only a matter of time that you will attract. When you're kind to you, when you love yourself, when you take the time just to, and also visualizing, right? Also asking and praying, and all these things that we just believe, because I do believe the universe, it's extremely abundant. I actually, my favorite book is the 10 top things that people want to tell you, and it talks about that. It says that humanity is the only people that believe that there's not enough. And so it's just, it tells us about life, and that God loves us for just being here, for just the fact of existence. Like, we don't need anything, and when we think something, the world orchestrates to give us that. So it's very important to stay positive, especially right now. Everybody's nervous. Everybody, like, we already see people fighting over food, and we're not even in the worst time. We just started this like a few weeks ago. And
Yeah.
so when we stop and think and send in a positive energy, and when we get out of ourselves and start serving others, I think we're going to be seeing some pretty good changes, where people that perhaps were greedy before, now they probably want to share something, or it's going to teach us all of us are going to learn something from this. And hopefully it will be, we're going to learn the lessons that we signed up for before we came into this lifetime.
Hmm.
But I appreciate you very much. Thank you for taking the time. I really like that you were able to share with us your story, and I hope that it will help a lot of people, in anywhere that they see this. And so thank you so much, Eric. I hope that you have a wonderful day today, and we will see you soon in another real estate transaction. Go, Eric. Sorry, before we go, tell us where we find you. Tell people where to find you.
Oh, thank you. So, if anybody wants to reach out to me, my cell phone number is 801-448-2133. You can also look me up on Facebook under Eric Brown, or Eric Brown Century 21 Real Estate. I live in Salt Lake. I it's really one of my intentions through this is to give more and to help more. So if anybody feels like they want to reach out, they're more than welcome to. Um, because I know that, we're all just trying to get through this together. So
Okay. Thank you so much, Eric. And I'm Elizabeth Cordero with Cordero Investments LLC. You can reach me on Facebook with Cordero Investments, or any social media. Thank you so much for your time, and we will chat soon. Have a wonderful
see you
day.
later. Have a good
Bye.
day.
Bye
Bye.
bye.